y'all, and welcome back to my channel. On this page, I talk about technology, money, and sometimes trending news. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. Please consider liking and sharing the video. Liking and sharing the video helps the algorithm out. It also helps me out and encourages me to continue creating content that you all find interesting and engaging. And also consider sharing this video as well. So today I wanted to come on really quickly. You know, I've been following in terms of technology, what's happening in the real estate market with the use of like artificial intelligence and automation. And also just following along in the news and talking with other content creators, as well as in my circle, about the future of work. You know, I'm a registered nurse working in tech, but I know other people who are not in healthcare who work in tech, and just having conversations with my network about what the continuous evolution of technology, how it continues to evolve, means for our lives, what it means for our careers, and just how we handle our personal business. So I came across this really interesting article about robot landlords. It really caught my attention, and I wanted to share that with you all. And there's something interesting in the article about robot landlords and what it says on the impact of the automation on the labor market for middle-aged men. So that's about, I think, 35 to 44. And I'll share an article. And as always, I'll be sure to leave a link to all resources in the description box. Okay. All right. So let me share my screen here. All right, here we are. Okay. So this article comes to us from Vice, okay? So it goes, robot landlords are buying up houses, all right? So companies with deep resources are outsourcing management to apps and algorithms, putting home ownership further out of reach. And I also put in the title of this video, the continued automation of personal business. And before I get into the article, let me just take a moment and share what I mean by the continued automation of our personal business. So you think about like all the things for those of us who like have smartphones and really plugged in, you know, how we use technology so much and how it is so much embedded into our daily lives. Like if you order groceries using Instacart or DoorDash, or if you use those apps, if you use those apps to make money, or if you use rideshare like Uber or Lyft, and I know there are other rideshare apps in other countries in addition to Uber and Lyft. If you use like to pay your rent, like they talk about in this article, to pay your bills, you could do all of your bill paying automated and from your smartphone. So a lot of what we do and how we operate is so automated. And sometimes I think we just forget, because the technology is supposed to be seamless, right? It's supposed to be easy to use, and it has a low barrier of, like, you know, you should, for a very useful app, you should be able to open the app and intuitively be able to figure it out. Okay, so the article starts, I'm standing on the stoop of an empty brick row house in Pittsburgh. The person is looking at their phone, looking around. The house is in the alleyway facing the back of the church. The rain mailbox is stuffed. It says the rental company's website finishes scanning my face, and an algorithm decides that I do resemble the photo on the passport I uploaded earlier. I get a text with a temporary 6-digit key code. There is no one waiting to greet me as I enter. So the person goes into the house. They do a tour of the house. It's 840 square feet, etc. So the person checks out the rental property. They haven't met anybody, etc., etc. This home is, let's see, it does say where it is, and I'm skipping over it. But it talks about the person who's writing the article, interviewing this person, talks about who owns the home, etc. And this company has been buying houses in Pittsburgh, Minneapolis. Key is in a few other post-industrial metro areas where there are still plenty of cheap single-family homes. As soon as the person leaves, they get an automated text asking if I want to apply to rent the place at $1,590 a month. Just like the viewing, they could go through every other step, applying, paying a deposit, moving in, and living there without ever speaking to a human being. No one would give them a key, just a passcode. And that has just been an experience of some tenants of this company that owns these properties. Then it talks about, this is really interesting. Someone rented a 3-bedroom home in Cleveland. They lived there 2 years and they never interacted with anyone at the rental company except for one maintenance worker deployed to do fixes. He talks a little bit about what the experience was with moving in, how all the information was left in the folder on a counter, and all documents and passcodes provided electronically. There was no direct interaction with anyone. So this is an example of an automated landlord, a company that uses new data tools and technologies to minimize the costs. Oops, that ad popped up. Let me scroll. Just bear with me, y'all. To minimize the cost of on-site human labor while collecting profits from rental properties. They are essential to the new and growing sector of companies backed by Wall Street investment firms that buy up thousands of single-family rental homes across several states. So I have friends who own properties throughout the United States, and they just talk about how over the past few years they get like mailings, they get text messages, they get phone calls to say, I want to buy your home, I want to buy your home, and how prevalent that is across the country. I knew it was for, within my circle. I didn't realize how pervasive it was across the United States. And then it goes on to talk about the management company that owns all of these properties. But it's really interesting. And it does talk about how small this company that does this automated robot landlords, how small it is. It sounds like a small company, at least according to this article, but how much they are able to get done with a smaller team. It says approximately 35 employees on LinkedIn, according to their LinkedIn page. And then they manage 1,500 homes across 4 states and are working to acquire more. It outsources and automates most of the tasks that traditional landlords do. So we think about, again, going back to the conversation around the future of work, and then just what that means, like if you're already working in tech, what that means or working in tech, or even if you're not working in tech, if you're working in like a more traditional, like say if you're working in hospitality, what does this automation, the continued automation, mean for your future career in hospitality? That's just an example. Or even beauty. It goes on to say, think of a landlord, just not a landlord, but a representation of that class of people, depending on your experiences. You think about a landlord, like what was that? Was it Joe Pesci? There was a movie that came out, I think in the late 90s, about a landlord. And I cannot think of the name of that movie, but when people think of a landlord, they may think of someone like that, or like a neighborly type person that owns a couple of homes in a city or in a state. So regardless, it says one traditionally to be a landlord needed to do like some lead work. So lead work meaning, having the time and the capacity to show places to applicants, oversee maintenance, ensuring that rent got collected, etc. So for a landlord looking to expand, they also require deep knowledge of a local housing market and willingness to spend countless hours looking for and developing new properties, or maybe they had a small team. Okay. So this once limited the market of single family home rentals to small time landlords or companies across one metro area or maybe like a state. But that sector was not of interest to Walmart. And it says like, and this is really interesting. I'll be sure to leave a link to this peer review article that this professor of geography and global metropolitan studies conducted. She's based at the University of California, Berkeley, and wrote a paper on the automated landlord. Really interesting. The paper is about 30 or 40 pages, so I will not read through it, but I'll be sure to leave a link to it so you can go read through it. I may just briefly share the abstract with you to give you an idea of what she covers. But so she goes on to say, the single family rental market was very opaque because the ownership was so fragmented. Because of that, it was impossible to do things like securitization or real estate investment trusts. So this professor conducted interviews with tech vendors and employees at Wall Street rental companies. And then she has been following this trend of automated landlords or robot landlords since at least the late 2000s. Okay. So it says after the 2008 crash, data brokers and she mentions the two data brokers began producing heat maps of foreclosures. And I found this interesting. I did not realize, and see, I'm learning that heat mapping was also used in the real estate market. So I remember reading an article a while ago, a couple of years ago, about how heat mapping and satellites are used to track purchasing and spending at like stores like big box stores like a Walmart or a Target. And they use like how busy the parking lot is according to the satellites and the heat mapping to get an idea of how the industry, how the economy is doing. So I found it interesting that the real estate market is also using heat mapping in that same manner to keep track of foreclosures. So soon, new securities-backed companies were buying vast quantities of small homes, many of them foreclosures, with plans to rent them out. So then it talks about another security-backed company that has more than 80,000 houses in 16 metro areas. And then how Jeff Bezos and a couple of other folks have brought into this concept of a robot landlord or automated landlords and remote management of those properties and how they're able to turn a profit. And it's interesting. So institutional investment companies own only 3% of the single family home rental market, but they have saturated areas like Atlanta where they own about 1 in 5 single family rentals, and they're continuing to buy more. So I do have friends who live in the Atlanta area who own properties, and they talk, and just in our personal circle have talked about how they're constantly getting asked, getting these marketing messages about wanting to sell, if they want to sell their property, and how, they can sell their property without having to get an inspection done or buy it for cash, etc. So housing advocates and lawmakers who are more on the progressive side are pointing out how this automated landlord, these robot landlords, utilize the technology in this way for the real estate market, perpetuating lower and middle income Americans out of home ownership by buying up the kind of older 1,000 square footish house or home once affordable to first-time homeowners and inflating the market with investors. So it is acknowledged that there isn't much data on automated landlord effect on home prices, but they are suspecting that the fact that using this technology in this way can make it significantly harder for low to moderate income families to become homeowners, because that's the market that they're buying, and how it can disenfranchise those people. So then the article goes on to say how these automated landlord companies also use data tools to find up and buy up houses at a brisk pace. So, and again, in this paper, this professor of geography she talks about accumulation engines that are used to rapidly buy that properties for their portfolios. Housing data is fed into an algorithm, artificial intelligence again, which savors it for neighborhood desirability and amenities, proximity to like jobs, transportation, like logistics like that, construction, the construction type of the property and any repair use. And then Wall Street backed landlords then use this data to make split second decisions on which houses to buy. And so if it's reliable enough that they using the data that the algorithm is processing, for those properties not to have any type of inspection that most of what they're saying, almost any small time landlord would consider a must. And then it talks again about this property, which stretches the robot landlord concept by not having offices in place where it leases, has been on a buying spree. And what I found interesting, this article is we're about halfway through it. And again, I'll leave a link. It says that it sometimes puts in bids hours after houses go on the market, bids that few others can beat, that incentivizing the seller to sell very quickly. So they did talk about this person who bought a home in Cincinnati. He bought it for $117,000 in 2017, put it on the market. He said, but when he put it on the market, he received a cash offer from this company for $10,000 more than his asking price. And also the company agreed to waive inspections, and he sold his home for $173,500. That is a significant profit for the seller. But it's interesting that these companies that are, they are able to buy these properties over the asking price. I know of people, I've had friends, now I'm not in the same market as these people are, but I've had friends who sold their homes in the past few years, and they talk about how fast their homes have sold. I had a neighbor who told me that they put their house on the market and sold so fast they didn't have time to put the sign in the yard. That's how fast some people's houses have been getting sold. All right. So then it talks a little bit in terms of within these firms, how automated and digitized processes perform the key functions of the landlord. Showings are done via self-guided tours, passcodes replace keys, application leases and payments are done through a web portal, repair requests are put in an online queue, and then, managed like that or outsourced to local contractors. These companies are also using geo tracking. So if they do have to deploy a repair person, they use tracking on the workers as they move from job to job. And as the repair person completes the work, they use their cell phone to confirm any completed repairs. Then it talks a little bit about how some of these companies that use robot landlords or automated landlords ask their tenants to do their own repairs, like giving the tenants how-to guides for doing things like replacing lights and things like that. Let's see. I'm going to continue skimming through this article. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, let me do a quick time check because I didn't want to be, okay, cool. We're 18 minutes in. I didn't want to be here too long today. So one thing I wanted to point out so I could talk about the next topic, how middle-aged men are increasingly missing from the labor market, according to an article from New York Times, is how it was called out in this article about automated robot landlords and how that is impacting the labor market, and tie these two in and then bring it home. Let's see, I'm scrolling here. Let's see here. All right. All right. Oh, it talks a little bit about another tenant in the Pittsburgh area who had essentially a robot landlord, and how she noticed just the neighborhood that she was renting in. Where is that part about automation? Let me do a quick control find if I can find it. There was something in this article, and I cannot find it, about the impact of all of this old automation, at least in real estate and landlords and all that, on the labor market. And I was going to tie it into this other article from the New York Times, but I'll just go ahead and move to it. So this article, just again, the continued automation of like our personal business and just the continued evolution of technology and how it impacts our lives. Came across this article in NYT on why are middle-aged men missing from the labor market. Men ages 35 to 44 are staging a lackluster rebound from pandemic job loss despite a strong economy. So the article centers around this gentleman who is now, he's using DoorDash, which I talked a little bit about earlier, the apps, personal business, managing our daily personal lives to earn income for his family. He worked as an analyst at a hospital company that was the functions of his job became automated. He lost his job. So he chose to stay home. He talks a little bit about how his wife wanted to go back to work, and he was just a little bit disappointed about how his career was turning out. So he's 38. I meant to mention that. So he stepped away. It says stepped away from employment during his prime working years, hints at one of the biggest surprises in today's job market. Hundreds of thousands of men in their late 30s and 40s, early 40s, stopped working during the last 3 years and have lingered on the labor market sidelines since. He's now working, but it says that they are an anomaly, as many men the same age, in that same age range, seem to be staying out of the workforce altogether. Now, why is that? And so they did talk a little bit about how the people working or looking for work is down. It was 90.9% before the last 3 years, and now it's about 89%. So it is going down. But the article goes on to talk about a little bit about the impact again of the impact on the decline in the labor market and how it spans racial groups, right? It's not just is not one particular, at least in this article, they don't segment out racial groups, but this issue is impacting across racial groups. But if they do call it out, it has been most heavily concentrated among men who do not have a 4-year college degree. And it says the pullback comes despite the fact that wages are rising and job openings are plentiful, including fields like truck driving and construction, where college degrees are not required and men tend to dominate. And it does say that economists have not determined any single factor that is keeping men from returning to work, but they're saying it may be like a culmination of things, right? Changing social norms around parenthood and marriage. The birth rates are down. They're either marrying later or not at all, shifting opportunities. So yeah, it's a different world, y'all. And then they do share a couple of data graphics. And here's the thing. God, it's such a little thing, but I can't stand when people share a graph and don't label the X and Y axis. I know it's such a tiny little thing, but I like to have my X and Y axis labeled. Okay, so they have some additional information here about the October jobs report, and then the supply chain. Now, here's the interesting thing. So while the labor market, this is one thing I saw a positive about this article. So while the labor market is impacting middle-aged men and it's trending down, one positive thing is that it has, with the last 3 years, and more employers offering remote work arrangements, employment has increased among adults with disabilities. I see that as a positive thing. There is a content creator I follow on other social media platforms by the name of Crutches and Spice, and she talks a lot about, she's disabled, but she talks a lot about like the impact of how the world is changing and just like politics and laws and things like that can impact the disabled population. But so employment, how the world has changed. Well, how the world has changed over the past few years have negatively impacted middle-aged men. It has been a positive among adults. Employment among adults with disabilities has increased. So they talk about how, this article ties in how men lost jobs in big numbers during 2008 financial crisis, like as construction and home building industries went down. And it took a long time took years for people to maintain that footing. So people who were in their mid-20s and early 30s and just getting started in the careers, for some of them, the employment rates never fully recovered. So we're seeing the impact of what happened back in 2008. It's still playing out now, many years later, okay? So they talked about a little bit about the war on crime in the 80s and 90s and how men with criminal records, it made it difficult for some to land jobs. And that may be an explanation why men are decreasingly in the labor market. It talks a little bit about the rise of opioid addictions. Video games had improved in quality, so staying home might have become more attractive. And then also the decline, as I talked a little bit earlier about the decline of nuclear family units, like, the traditional mom, a dad, 2 kids, a dog, and a house with a a fenced-in yard with a picket fence, etc. And then how it's repeating again, how men seem to be staying out of work and job searches more than any other demographics. And again, they don't call out any particular race, but it's interesting. There's someone here from a workforce development agency is saying, who's the vice president of data and operations, again, using the data to analyze these things, saying how they have observed a decrease in the number of men in that age range coming in for services, and a disproportionately high share of those who do come in don't take a job. Okay. And then let's see here. I'll leave a link to this article. Oh, here it is. This is the piece that I'm going to kind of end in, since we're running up on 30 minutes, I think. But it talks about, again, how this group, how this group has been hit by this age range of men, have been hit by automation, by globalization. And this is an economist. And then, so that's interesting. So again, as we have these conversations about the future of work, that's enough of that article. I won't share anymore, but I'll be sure to leave a link in the description. But as we think about, let me check my notes here. As we think, why do I continue to talk about this, right? Why is it of such interest to me? Because I think about, again, the conversations that YouTubers are having and other content creators are having around like the future of work. Even if you are established in your career and you feel secure in your job, that does not mean you should rest on your laurels, right? You should always be looking to see what are those things that you can be doing, or me. When I say you, I'm also talking about me. Doing to continuously make sure that we are assessing our skills in the labor market, if we need to go back to school, if we need to gain new certifications, if we need to do what is called there's another content creator, I talk about her before, Cherie, over on Black Women Making Money, and she is reviewing will be reviewing a book, and in that book it talks about monkey branching. And monkey branching is using going from a job, instead of staying at a job 10 years, 15 years, using the opportunity to go from job to job, but not just lateral moves, like you take a position, you stay at that company a few years, and then you move to the next company and a step up. And that step up includes like a step up in salary, in benefits, and things like that. So we just can't rest on our laurels, and just the awareness about that, assessing our career skills. I'm really big on generational wealth and ensuring that there's a legacy to be left for my family, and talking about the continuous automation of personal business, and how we think about, sometimes we see the effects. We use technology so much in our daily lives. It's so embedded in terms of like rideshare, delivery apps, grocery apps, ordering prescription refills, paying rent, or like rent algorithms. The article I did about 2 weeks ago or so about how artificial intelligence is used to increase, because we're seeing the increase in rents, and now, you know, the prevalence of robot landlords. By the time we see these things in the market, some company has already put this in their strategic plan from 5-10 years ago, right? So we're just now seeing the effects of that, and just the automation, making sure that we're not being unless that's our goal, to become not obsolete, but, you know, not to have to stay up on everything, but just ensuring that as we're seeing these things, we're talking with our children about, okay, the type of careers that you go into, how that's going to help yourself, you know, generate income for your family. So I think about the continued automation in this New York Times article. Now, just to wrap up, I took a road trip with my family in the last week or so. Now, we actually drove down south, down the 85 South corridor. That was my first time riding down that way in a good 8 to 10 years, because the traveling that I've been doing the past few years have all been flying. So flying to Atlanta, flying here, flying there. But driving down the 85 South corridor, I'm talking about the continued automation of personal business. And we're seeing this also play out with robot landlords and rent algorithms. I noticed, we know, and we talked about it in the car, family was talking about it, the prevalence of, now they may have been there for the past 5 years. I just noticed it in the last week, 2 weeks. But the prevalence of these massive warehouses, like a Chewy warehouse, an Ace Hardware warehouse, logistic company warehouses that I have never heard of before, just different types of companies having, I mean, it was literally maybe every 2 or 3 miles off of each exit, almost, it seemed like, or every couple of exits, these giant company warehouses. And then we had a conversation in the car about, okay, now who's working in these warehouses? You know, are they using, robots? Because we see how Amazon is shifting, and I did a video on it last week, how Amazon is piloting using robots and more automation in their warehouses. Okay, so as we're riding down 85 South and then coming back 85 North, I mean, there's warehouses on both sides, right? And I was like, I did not realize how much is being automated, more so that, what's changing in logistics and shipping and all of that. So again, the awareness. And then one last thing about that is we were coming up 85 South. We had stopped in one of the largest cities and merging onto traffic, and we have these in my area, but one of my family members in the car had not seen how they now have stoplights on the interstate. So as you're merging into traffic, you as the driver no longer makes a decision when to merge into traffic. The traffic light is constantly, they have the cameras and things, and the traffic lights are constantly assessing when is the best time, or this, this car merges into traffic, now this one. So yeah, y'all, that's it. I'll be sure again to leave a link to all articles. I'm just checking my notes for one last thing, making sure that I covered all my points. Heat maps, housing data. Yep. Again, thinking about the future of work. Leave a link to our articles. If you made it this far in the video and you're watching it from the future, please do consider liking and sharing the video, subscribing to the channel. I'll be sure, leave a comment below if you've seen what your thoughts are about these robot landlords and the continued automation of how we do our personal business. The next video I'll be live again on, let me just check my calendar here. I think it's either Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. I'll be live. Just bear with me. I'll be live again on looks like Tuesday or Wednesday. But every year I do, for the past 2 years, I've done ways, because I'm really big on, money and looking at ways to save money. But I'll be doing a video this year on a recession-proof Christmas, 3 ways to enjoy the holidays without spending big money. So all the talking heads in finance have been talking about how we are slowly 2023, we're going into a recession, or we're already seeing like the inflation and how things are impacting. So I'm going to share 3 things my family have been doing for the past few years. Like, these are things that we haven't, that aren't new to us, but I'll be sharing 3 ways that we enjoy the holidays without either spending big money or spending no money. So that's my next video, y'all. Thanks always for everyone who supports the channel and sends me content, and also everyone who donates to the Cash Apps and sending in donations. I really appreciate it. It keeps things going around here. Y'all have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.